In the history of nuclear weapons, there exists one remarkable exception, a nation that not only built nuclear weapons, but then chose to completely dismantle them. That nation was South Africa. While countries like Ukraine and Belarus gave up nuclear weapons, these were inherited Soviet arsenals. South Africa remains the only country to have independently developed nuclear weapons and then voluntarily dismantled them. By 1989, South Africa had built 6 operational nuclear bombs, with a 7th under construction. Each weapon had roughly the same destructive power as the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Yet by 1991, every single one of these weapons would be dismantled, their existence only revealed to the world 2 years later. But to understand how South Africa got its nuclear weapons, and more importantly, why they gave them up, we need to step back to the 1960s. In 1948, South Africa's white minority government had instituted apartheid, a system of strict racial segregation and discrimination. This policy would increasingly isolate South Africa from the international community. Yet in the early 1960s, South Africa maintained relatively good relations with Western powers, particularly the United States and Britain. The country's nuclear program began innocently enough. South Africa possessed abundant uranium reserves, and in 1965, with American assistance, they commissioned their first nuclear reactor. The official purpose was peaceful nuclear research and energy production. But by the early 1970s, South Africa's position in the world was changing dramatically. International opposition to apartheid was growing. The United States and other Western nations began distancing themselves from the regime. In 1975, America suspended its nuclear fuel shipments to South Africa. Meanwhile, regional tensions were escalating. Portuguese colonial rule had collapsed in neighboring Angola and Mozambique. As Angola approached independence in late 1975, Soviet-backed Cuban troops began deploying to the region, establishing a communist foothold directly on South Africa's borders. With Soviet influence suddenly at their doorstep, South Africa's government made a crucial decision, one that would remain secret for nearly 2 decades. Prime Minister John Vorster authorized the development of what he called a limited nuclear deterrent capability. The word limited was carefully chosen. South Africa wasn't planning to build an extensive arsenal like the superpowers. The immediate trigger was the deteriorating situation in southern Africa. Soviet influence was expanding across the region, and Cuba had deployed 50,000 troops to Angola. For South Africa's isolated government, these forces represented an existential threat. South Africa's nuclear strategy was unusual. According to declassified documents, they never intended to actually use these weapons in combat. Instead, they developed a 3-phase deterrence strategy that was essentially nuclear blackmail aimed at forcing Western intervention. Phase 1 was strategic uncertainty. South Africa would neither confirm nor deny having nuclear weapons. The government believed this ambiguity alone might deter Soviet-backed forces from launching a major attack. If the country faced a severe military threat, they would move to Phase 2, secretly revealing their nuclear capability to Western governments, particularly the United States. If this failed to prompt Western intervention, Phase 3 would involve either publicly announcing their nuclear capability or conducting an underground nuclear test. South Africa maintained test shafts in the Kalahari Desert for this scenario. South Africa built its nuclear weapons at facilities known as the Y Plant and the Kentron Circle Building. The program used a unique enrichment process to produce weapons-grade uranium. The South African bombs were relatively simple, using a gun-type design similar to the Hiroshima bomb. By 1989, 6 devices had been completed, with a 7th under construction. By 1989, the strategic landscape had transformed. The Soviet Union was declining, Cuban forces withdrew from Angola, and the security threats that had justified South Africa's nuclear arsenal were diminishing. F.W. de Klerk became president in 1989, facing an inevitable end to apartheid. His priority was ensuring a peaceful transition of power. The nuclear weapons complicated this transition. The white minority government didn't want nuclear capability transferred to the future black majority government. In February 1990, de Klerk issued instructions to terminate the program and dismantle all existing weapons. In July 1991, South Africa joined the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and in 1993, de Klerk revealed South Africa's nuclear past. International inspectors verified the program's complete dismantlement. South Africa's nuclear story remains unique, a nation that developed nuclear weapons, then completely dismantled them while still under the control of the same government that built them. Their voluntary disarmament created a significant precedent for nuclear non-proliferation. Their case demonstrates how political isolation can drive proliferation, and how dramatic political shifts can make disarmament possible. While the decline of Soviet influence played a role, the end of apartheid was likely decisive. The white minority government, facing inevitable transition to black majority rule, chose to dismantle the program rather than risk passing nuclear capability to a government they couldn't control. Perhaps most importantly, South Africa shows that nuclear disarmament is possible when circumstances change dramatically.